everyone, I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage, and I'm going to show you how to do two-color binding. Two-color binding is quite a time saver and adds a nice interest to your quilt. It's all done in the sewing machine. The majority of your binding is one color with a tiny little piping showing through. As a bonus, I will show you how to do a hanging sleeve, so stay tuned. So this is the kind of finished edge we want. The second color, the accent, leaves a little wee piping along the edge, and the majority of your binding is another color. When you do the cutting, the majority of the binding you want to cut at 1 3/8 inch. The color that is the small piping you want to cut at 1 5/8 inch. So first thing you need to do is trim up your quilt, and then you want to join your strips and join each strip individually. So your accent strip, join them all on the diagonal, and then do the same thing with the main color of your binding. You want to trim away the extra at about 1/4 inch and press the seam open. Some people will press it to one side. I prefer pressed open just because it gives a little bit less bulk. Then you want to join your two strips together. Once you've created a continuous line of the strip, the length that you need for all your binding, for each color, you want to sew them together. So you put one raw edge together and you sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you want to press, and you want to press towards the main color of the binding. Then you want to fold that in half with the raw edges of the long edge together and press. And you can see the little bit of piping that's coming on the front side there. Now, as a little bonus, I'm going to show you how to do a hanging sleeve. So you want to cut a strip for your hanging sleeve about the width of your quilt. Now, I will often use a small piece of whatever was trimmed off my backing, or you can add whatever you want. And you want to cut it between 4 and 5 inches by the width of your quilt. Then you want to finish the edges. Some people just turn them under twice and then sew it on. I like to stitch mine. So you turn it about 1/2 inch under, turn it again 1/2 inch under, press it, and then I like to stitch mine. Then you want to fold it in half on the lengthwise, right in half, and press it. Then you will align that piece with the raw edges on the raw edge of the top end of the back side of your quilt. So the raw edges of your sleeve to the raw edge of your quilt on the top edge on the back side. Then you want to stitch it, and you want to stitch it at less than 1/4 inch, so that when you do put your binding on, there is no stitching showing. It will be within your binding. Then you want to put your binding on, and you want to put the color that is your accent showing up. And so the main color of your binding will face down, and you want to put this on, stitch it onto the back side of your quilt with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I always like to leave a little tail when I start so that I can come around and finish that, trim it and finish it at the end. So there's different ways to finish it, and I do have a video, and I'll put a link at the bottom here of finishing the end of that binding. So I won't go into that now. So you stitch all the way around, and you can refer to the other video if you want for stitching your binding on. The only thing different is we are stitching this to the back of the quilt. Then you want to press it away from the back and pull it to the front. So you can see here it's just on the edge of the front, and you can see your accent color coming back from the front, from the back of the quilt, coming to the front from the back of the quilt. So you want to pull it to the front, and then I use the binding clips to hold it in place, and you want to stitch in the ditch. So you want to use a color that matches the color of your little accent strip. You stitch all the way around. And voila, you're done. The only thing that you still need to do is on the back of your quilt, once you've got your binding all stitched on, you need to stitch down your hanging sleeve. And the hanging sleeve, you want to push up just a little bit, about a 1/4 inch. So you lay it flat and then push it up just a 1/4 inch. And that is where you stitch it to the back of your quilt. And you stitch that just by hand, as if you were hand stitching your binding with a little blind stitch. So you grab a little piece of the quilt, a little piece of the sleeve, and you always leave it up just a 1/4 inch so that that creates a little bump on the back rather than making a bump on the front that your hanging rod can be put into. So you stitch all the way across and you're done. So I hope you enjoyed that. I haven't done this before. So as I said yesterday on my live, I'm going to try this, and I'm not 100% happy with my job, but you know what? It's the first time I did it. And if you're doing something for the first time, you do it again next time better. So thanks for watching. I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage. Bye for now.